Hello my lovely and welcome back to the Mother Gaia Birthy Pod. Today I'm bringing back the wonderful Linda Meduri to continue her story. If you listened to our last chat, you'll remember Linda opened up about her experience with early miscarriage and the emotional impact it had on her journey into motherhood. But that was only part of her story. This time Linda is here to share the birth of her son, a birth she had carefully planned to be at home, surrounded by love and support, but as the birth so often does, things didn't quite go to plan. Instead of the calm, undisturbed home birth she had hoped for, Linda found herself facing an emergency C-section. In this episode, we're talking about what happens when birth takes an unexpected turn, the emotions, the decisions, and the reality of navigating a medical system when things don't go as planned. Linda's story is raw, powerful, and deeply relatable for anyone who has faced birth trauma, medical intervention, or the challenge of surrendering to the unknown. So grab a cuppa, get comfy, and let's begin. Cracking. So where we left off last time, we kind of went through struggles with getting pregnant. We went through your pregnancy, a few little ups and downs, and we kind of sort of stopped it right on the verge of this was the actual birth. So
Right.
yeah.
No, I can start there. So I actually I wanted to have natural induction. And so leading up to the birth, I made it up to like 41 weeks. I think they became 41 weeks and a half. But right when I got to 37 weeks, I was like, okay, I'm ready for this baby. But we had made plans like we were gonna wait until my water broke. Like we wanted to go the natural route. I didn't want to go in and get induced. And so we talked. I had a midwife, I think I mentioned last time, and a doula. And they said, if you get acupuncture, there's like certain things you can do to get natural induction. And I was drinking my raspberry tea and all that. But I went to get an acupuncture on Saturday, and this acupuncturist was so incredible. They do like electro acupuncture, so they stick the needles and then they connect it to some sort of like electric thing. So it's really intense. Like you can feel the contractions as
Okay.
yeah, it definitely like gets the baby moving. So I got that done on a Saturday, and Sunday, like Monday morning, like Sunday 1 a.m. So it's like early Monday morning, I started getting contractions. So
Right.
actually it worked
Yeah,
for
it's
me.
worked.
I mean, I
Yeah.
don't know if it's gonna work for others, but it worked for me. And so the plan was for us to have this baby at home. We had a baby room set up, a birthing room, the tub, and it was so beautiful. We had pictures of all our past ancestors, like
Oh
every
wow.
yeah, and lights. And my husband put all these affirmations on the mirrors, like so that during the process, like I have something to look to. He had family write words of encouragement.
Oh, that's
um
nice.
yeah, and we kept it just between the two of us and our providers that we were having a home birth, so no one else knew, which
Ooh.
was yeah, right. Because I mean, naturally, home births are not the most common now, and so we kind of wanted to just have it so that we're maintaining that like process, and there's no outside noise about it. Like, are you sure
Yeah.
this is a good idea?
Yeah. There's a lot of that, isn't there? Like even though actually it is the safest place to give birth, and it's the less likely to have extra interventions and less likely to go into C-sections and all that kind of stuff, there's still that myth where a lot of people are still like, oh well, is it safe, and you
Right,
don't have any medicine around you and all this kind of
right.
stuff. And when you are aiming for that, you don't need those little
You,
niggles.
no, you're just, you don't need any of it. And I went through so much preparation for this home birth. And like, fast forward 6 months postpartum, I wish that I had done as much preparation for what could happen for an emergency, because that's what ended up happening. I ended up having an emergency C-section. But I spent so much time like doing you know, what is it? just mental work in
Yeah.
preparation. I figured out, I found a hypnotherapist that worked with me to like help me go through the contractions. And so at one point, I'm laying in the bed going through a contraction. I've been going through a contraction for like, I think it was like a couple of hours.
Yeah.
And my husband comes in and says, I can hear them talking, my husband and the midwife, and they're like, is she sleeping? And they're like, she's so quiet. What's going on? And I think I was like, I'm not sleeping. I've been going through contractions this whole time.
Yeah.
I think it was about 3 hours. I was just laying there still. And they're like, what's going on? And I was just channeling a lot of what I had learned during hypnotherapy. Anyway, so I had 27 hours of labor, very beautiful in the home. I spent, the doula set up the shower, and so my husband and I were in the shower, and there were all these like nice smelling products in there. It was just beautiful, candles everywhere.
Yeah.
And right when I got to, I think it was about 8.5 or 8.5, I think it's 8.5 or 9, but it's different because you're at home. So she's like sort of just tracking it differently.
Yeah.
I was dilated and they were like, okay, it's time. Let's go into the tub. This baby's coming. So I get in the tub, feels great. I'm just in there. I'm enjoying this. I'm in the moment. And we start, I think later, my husband told me that he started noticing the doula and the midwife kind of going aside, having a chat, coming back, checking me, having a chat. So he was kind of like, what's going on? And I remember the midwife saying, we're going to get you out of the tub. We're just going to have you rest because it looks like your cervix is really swollen. And so we kind of need you to like rest before we can continue this because you're not going to be able to have this baby if that's the case.
Yeah.
Did that, like rested for a bit, and then she made the call. She was like, you know what, Linda, we have to go in. We have to go in because at this point it seems like each time you have a contraction, his heartbeat stalls, and we don't want to take any chances.
Yeah.
So 2 o'clock in the morning, we drive to the closest hospital, which is it's a residency hospital.
Okay.
So, right? Because she called my doctor's hospital and they said, as soon as she gets here, we're having a C-section. No discussion, no conversation. And I was like, absolutely not. I'm not going to have a C-section. So she said, let's go to this other place because they know me there. That's where I do all my transfers. I'm pretty sure they're not going to force you to have a C-section. So we go to this residency hospital. By the way, I'm going to have my second kid. If I have a baby, I'm going to go back there because I think these residency hospitals, they actually take such good care because these people are like really, they want to do a good job.
Yeah.
And later on, I found out that the doctor that performed my C-section actually trained my gynecologist who would have delivered my son. You know what I mean? So it's like a small world. But anyway, so we make the transfer to the hospital, 2 o'clock in the morning. I'm sitting in the front of the car, just still. I'm trying to but it's been 27 hours of no medication, no resolution. I'm in a lot of pain.
Yeah.
So I'm just sitting there. My husband is driving through all the portholes, all the bumps. Like I'm feeling every single movement that the car is making. As soon as we got to the hospital, I lost it. That's when I was like, okay, I'm here. Now I can lose it. So they bring out the little wheelchair. They wheel me up to labor and delivery. Thankfully, my midwife is well known at that hospital, so they kind of got my paperwork done, put me in a room immediately. And I just kept saying, I don't want to have a C-section. I don't want any medication. I just want this baby out. And each time I could see it now because they they connected me through all these systems. I could see each time I had a contraction, his heart rate would dip. Like it was very visible. And so they came in twice and they were like, hey, listen, we might need to have a C-section because I'd been there for, I think it's around 4 o'clock in the morning. And they're like, listen, you are not dilating. In fact, you're going back. It's going backwards. So now you're like about 6.5. And so they were worried and they were like, there's another person here who's getting ready to go and have a C-section. If you wait and they go in before you, and you have an emergency, we're not going to be able to help you
Yeah.
because they only had one OR
Yeah.
operating room. So we sat there, and I mean, I remember crying, like just all my tears, because for 8 months, because right at the second month, we were like, oh, yeah, right when we were like, oh, we're pregnant, we want to have this baby at home. It was very early on in my pregnancy. So for the entire pregnancy, I knew that I was going to deliver this baby at home. I got so excited about that. I was so thrilled about the possibility of having this baby in a space where they would be raised, that I just felt like my dream was just shattered entirely. Um, Thankfully, the whole C-section process was really fast. I healed pretty fast from it, but the trauma associated with like 27 hours of home labor, very peaceful, very beautiful, painful, but just still very beautiful. Transferring to a hospital, feeling like I have no choice, even though I did. Like the choice would have been, I'll wait, and that could have put me or my baby at risk.
Yeah.
But like feeling rushed, we have to go and do this. Getting wheeled into the operating room, I could not stop shaking. I was so cold. It just felt very foreign, like going from candles and little lights to like bright lights.
I just want to take a moment here, my lovely, to acknowledge how heavy this conversation might feel for some of you. If you're listening and this is bringing up emotions, whether it's memories of your own birth, fears for the future, or just that deep, aching empathy, I see you. You are not alone in this. Birth can be unpredictable, and when things don't go as planned, it's okay to grieve, to feel angry, or to need time to process. If this episode is hitting close to home and you need support, please reach out. Whether that's talking with a trusted friend, booking a birth debrief, or finding a space where you can feel heard and validated, your feelings matter. If you'd like to chat, my inbox is always open, and you can find more support through my website or social media. You deserve to feel seen and supported no matter how your birth unfolded. Now let's get back to Linda's story.
And one of them said, "What kind of music do you like?" And I told her. And so they played this music throughout the operation.
Nice.
Super fast, down immediately. He latched, and I was out of there.
Yeah.
And that was my birth.
Yeah. I mean, it's beautiful, and it's it's amazing. And even though we've had that, you've had to transfer, you've had that emergency, it just kind of goes to show that you could be ready for everything, or you could be ready for nothing, and things like that. But it's not a failure. It's not a failure on your behalf. You haven't done anything wrong. It just happened that this one time there was something that needed to be done, and you did what you needed to do as a mum to get baby there safely and healthily.
Right.
It's a lot of like you were saying, the transition from one place to another can be quite a shock to the system.
Yeah.
And then you've also got that you're grieving, really, because you've had that thought in your head all that time. This is where I'm going to be. This is what I'm going to do. This is how it's going to happen. Right. And you don't have time to transition, especially in an emergency, from one thing to another. So you do have that part afterwards where you need to give yourself the space and the grace to grieve what you lost and to come to terms with what kind of happened. How did you deal with that afterwards? Because obviously you've then got the drop in hormones. A lot of people get baby blues and things like that, and it can be quite big. But for I know when I transitioned and there was other bits and pieces, I still had time where I had weeks where I was like grieving and going through depression and things like that to handle it, and I didn't have an emergency. So how did you get through that?
Honestly, I'm I'm sitting here right now and I'm like, how did I get through it? And I want to say, I definitely had postpartum anxiety, but it wasn't like to the extent that I expected it to be. I was afraid of postpartum depression, even without the transfer,
Yeah.
Like I was just afraid of it in general. Honestly, all I can say is I've done so much work from a therapy standpoint. I've had years of therapy, and maybe I just channeled that, like
Yeah.
going through this process. When I was getting released, we found out that I might have preeclampsia. So on top
Wow.
of everything, they're like, your blood pressure is so high. I had high blood pressure for 4 days. I had to monitor it. They couldn't give me medication because I was breastfeeding. So it was just like a nightmare. Every day I had to wake up in the morning, take my blood pressure, then at night take my blood pressure, and it was up there. I mean, I've
Yeah.
never seen it that high. 160. It's like it was so high, and I was like, am I gonna have a stroke and leave my baby that I just had?
Yeah.
And the one thing that I will say that was harder than all these things, like all those things I could manage, surprisingly, the hardest was a comment that was made that that's what I remembered the most. I don't remember all these things. I'm like, okay, I'll make it through. But there was a comment that was made in the midst of all of this, trying to breastfeed, trying to make sure my milk is coming, sleep deprivation. There's a comment that was made about my milk being the problem, the reason why my baby wasn't sleeping. And that comment, like, while I'm trying to figure out breastfeeding, while I'm trying to figure out how to be a new mom, that to me tore me apart more than the transfer, more than the C-section, more than that was all I remember the most. Because it was 3 days postpartum, and the same person, I think there were comments that were made about my decision to do the transfer, about my decision to go to a county hospital. And to me, that was just so traumatic because I was like, I couldn't wrap my head around the fact that you mean me making a decision to go to the closest hospital that will save my life and my baby's life was wrong. You mean me trying to nourish my baby is making my baby not sleep? And people don't realize this. As a new mom, you're thinking about all these things already. Like, I'm already wondering, is it my fault that he's not sleeping? Is
Mm-hmm.
it my fault that he's crying? Is it my fault that, like, he's having a hard time? And so, someone saying it out loud, it's like a knife, like straight to your chest. And so, I would say, like, I wasn't I dealt with a lot of postpartum rage for
Mm-hmm.
sure. Like I just struggled with the fact that it was very quick. Like I struggled with the fact that I have to take care of this baby and my husband's life is still the same. Like I think one of the days I remember saying to him, I used to say this and I stopped. I used to be like, babe, can I please go take a shower? And it's like,
Right.
why do I have to ask you? I
Yeah.
should just be able to, here, take the baby. I'm gonna go take a shower. So they were that I dealt with, but the depression, the anxiety, the depression side, it happened a bit with, oh my God, am I gonna die from a stroke? And
Mm.
then as soon as my blood pressure was back to normal, I was okay. The anxiety was primarily from, like, a lot of the comments, the unsolicited advice that people tell you, that really messed with my anxiety more than even the transfer and everything. So yeah.
Yeah. And it's sort of, if you haven't been through that or you haven't experienced those kind of things, it sounds really silly that someone saying one sentence to you can really stick with you. I mean, I had this very, very similar thing when my first was really little. He was having problems breastfeeding. He was crying all the time. He didn't sleep very well. There was issues and issues and issues and issues. We took him to see a pediatrician, and the pediatrician said, "You're just an over anxious first time mum. Go home and relax." And it really, really got to me
Right.
that I
Right.
wasn't sleeping. He wasn't sleeping. We actually found out later on that he had a cleft palate and he
Oh,
couldn't feed properly.
right.
So sometimes you might never actually find out. Sometimes you just have a baby that cries a lot.
Yeah.
Sometimes you have a baby that might have an issue, but actually resolves itself as the baby gets older, and then you might not find that out. But other
Right.
times, and most times, you actually find out that they've got colic or a lip tie or
Right.
whatever the issue happens to be. You'll
Yeah.
find out months down the line that X, Y, and Z was happening. And I think sometimes that feels more validating, because then you can go, I told you it wasn't me.
Right, exactly. And if you do have the chance to say that, I mean, I think I haven't had a chance to say it to this person. I haven't even addressed it. I'm just kind of like sitting on it, but I'm still breastfeeding. I still stress about it. I just spilled 3 ounces of milk this morning
Oh,
accidentally.
isn't it just the
Oh
worst?
my God. It's the first time I've done it, and my entire body just like, I just freshly pumped milk. I was like, oh my God, Linda, 3 ounces? That's so much milk. That's a whole feed. So
And people go, oh, well, it's only milk and blah, blah, blah. And it's like, yeah, but do you realize it took me days to eating the right food and
that was
remember
like,
what I was
right.
doing, and then sitting and pumping it out, and then I've just gone and spilt it and it's completely wasted. I may as well have not bothered.
I sat there and just stared at it, and I was like, how do I put this back? I mean, I've made it 6 months without spilling milk, and it happens today, but it's okay. We always say something like that happens early in the morning. That means it's pausing anything else negative that was gonna happen. So I'll take it.
Yeah.
But if there's a message for anyone who listens to your podcast and maybe they're thinking of how to best support their partner or or a family member, be really mindful of what you say to a fully like postpartum, like fresh postpartum woman, because we are just so vulnerable. The hormones are all over the place. We're scrutinizing ourselves so deeply. We're so anxious. We're going through a million things. And so anything you say, even though if you mean well, you're probably like come from a good place, if it rubs us in a way that just like doesn't feel good, that's all we remember. Like that's all I remember right now. 6 months postpartum. I don't remember, much of the pain of the C-section. Like, yeah, it was painful, but I was so excited. Like, here's my son. I was like, fine. Yeah, it's painful. It's uncomfortable. I have to like get laid down for a couple of days, but I get to lay down next to my boy. Like, that's okay. But a comment that was made is all, it's crazy. Like, you asked me, yeah, how was that? And all I can tell you is this comment that was made by someone else.
Yeah, it's mad, isn't it? I think like, so it's just sort of like backing up that thing. If anybody is around new mums and things like that, one of the best things that I don't know whether I've read it or someone said it to me or something like that, but ask them, what do you need right now? Do you want a bit of advice from when I was breastfeeding or blah, 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 blah? Do you want food? Do you want to go off and have a rest? Do you want me just to sit here and watch telly with you?
Yeah.
And let them tell you what they want to do, because 9 times out of 10, I'm going to go out on a limb and say most people won't ask you for advice unless they're really bloody struggling.
Right. I mean, a couple of days postpartum, I can't even think. Like, honestly, until you've gone, and I can speak for myself, until I've gone through this experience, I don't know what to ask for. Now, like, should I get a second chance? Now I know. Now I'm like, okay, wait, is this how the latch is supposed to be? Okay, wait, is this, but I had no idea 6 months ago. I'm just like, okay, I think this is right. And, when that comment was made, I was worried, is my son getting enough food? And so someone questioning my breast milk, I'm automatically like, oh my God, maybe he's not getting enough food. And this person is a mother too. So obviously I'm like, maybe they know something that I don't know,
And then you've got that whole thing as well when you're getting like health visitors or people coming around and this, that, and the other. How much do they drink? It's like, I don't know. I don't have milliliters written up my boob. Like,
I can't tell. I can't tell. And so it's all in all, like, I didn't get the birth that I wanted, but I got the prize that I wanted. And that to me is, and my health is fine. Like, I've heard very horrific stories of people having very terrible C-section healing trauma, where they can't move. I was able to move. I was able to move around. We live in a 2-story. I went up and down the stairs. I mean, I did the whole 40-day, like, 5 days in bed, 5 days near bed, 5 days in home, and then very limited moving around. And the midwife would come and visit the baby at home, so I didn't necessarily have to go into doctor visit. So all in all, like, I might have not given birth in a hospital, but I got the care. Like, I might not have given birth at home, but I got the care at home. I had a doula come and take care of me. So it worked out in the end, you know?
And that, my lovely, brings us to the end of this episode. A huge thank you to Linda for coming back and sharing her story with such honesty and vulnerability. Birth doesn't always go to plan, and these conversations are so important in helping us process, heal, and know that we're not alone. Next week is our final episode of the series, and we're closing things out with the second part of Nicole Hammock's political musings, so make sure you don't miss that. Then we're going to take a short break before coming back with series 2. Trust me, it's going to be bigger and better than ever. We're shaking things up with a brand new co-host, fresh segments, and even more ways for you to get involved. One of the new segments is Ask Us Anything, where you can send in your burning questions about pregnancy, birth, or parenthood, and we will find the answers for you. If you'd like to get involved, you can find our contact details in all the usual places down below in the show notes. So don't be shy, we'd love to hear from you. And until next time, take care and many blessings.